Hey guys, in this week's episode, we're going to talk about First Cow, the new film from Kelly Reichardt. But before that, we're going to talk about Driveways, Somewhere in Time, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I love Driveways.
Yeah, I park in one every day.
Yeah, me too. Backing out of them is hard sometimes.
Sometimes.
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me, as always, is the hero we need but we don't deserve, Mike. How are you doing today?
Inside joke. I'm annoyed now.
Are you? Did we ruin your night?
Yeah, you did. I think we should... I'm quitting.
I'm sorry,
good.
Mike.
Well, you weren't
I'm
kidding.
sorry.
That phrase does annoy you, doesn't
It does.
it?
Thanks a lot, Chris Nolan.
You're welcome. As all Chris's, I'll just say
You'll speak for all Chris's.
Yeah, I'll speak for all Chris's. Also with us is a man who just got back from milking his first cow. How are you doing today, Justin?
Good. I'm very scared because it was not my cow, and I didn't want to get shot.
Yeah, it can be rough. During the pandemic, milk has become much more scarce, so you have to go steal it.
And there's not many in the center of Houston, city where I live.
You have to drive hours to go get it.
Yeah. It is a journey.
Yeah, it's much more difficult than just going to buy milk. Anyways. All right, and if this is your first time listening, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about the film and TV shows that we've been watching, or the film and TV news that has been happening over the last week. Then we move into our feature review, and this week we'll be reviewing Kelly Reichardt's First Cow.
Yeah, and here on the Casual Cinecast, one of the things we really like to do is talk about the Criterion Collection every other episode. And the way we pick the Criterion Collection films is that each one of us picks a film, and then we put it up on the social media webs and let the listeners vote. So last week we had a theme of summer, and we put it out to you. And Mike, why don't we reveal the winner?
Sure. So, our Criterion poll winner for the theme of summer. Coming in first place is my choice, the right choice, Y2 Mama Tambien, with 37.5%. Second, you have Smiles of a Summer Night, which I believe was Justin's pick?
No, that was mine.
Nope, that was Chris's.
Okay, anyway, 33.3%. Almost cut it. And then third, Im Hulot's Holiday.
Yep, that was my pick.
Yeah, 29.2%. See, for some reason, I thought Chris had picked that one because I knew, but I remember he talked about watching all of Jacques Tati's movies separately.
Yeah.
I recall now.
It's confusing, but the poll was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought Y2 Mama Tambien was just going to run away.
Yeah, Smiles of the Summer Night did really well, I think. Better than I thought.
Yeah, at one point when I looked at the poll, when there was still lots of time left, Y2 Mama Tambien was not even in the lead.
Wow.
Yeah. Smiles of a Summer Night was like well into the lead for a little bit, and I thought, wow, am I going to lose?
I was excited because I thought we could watch an Ingmar Bergman movie, but
nope,
next
not
time.
yet.
Yeah.
We've already done that. We've already watched
one.
an Ingmar Bergman movie on this podcast.
One. 2 years ago, at the very beginning.
And you weren't even
and I
there
wasn't
for
even
it.
on that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if you want to vote and help choose our next Criterion film, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. We put the polls out on our Twitter, but we will link to them on Facebook. If you want to send us questions or topics to discuss about the movie we're reviewing each week, you can send messages to any of those social media accounts. You can also email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you haven't done so already, go onto iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Mm-hmm. It helps other people find the show. Mm-hmm. And if you don't use iTunes, give us a 5-star review or whatever the highest possible review you can on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on.
Yes. Please and thank you. And with that, gentlemen, are we ready to go ahead and just move on into News on the March so we can talk about whatever we've been up to this week?
I'd like to drive into News on the March since I'll be talking about driveways, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure, man.
Yeah.
You can get there however you want.
Appreciate it.
News on the march!
All right, Chris. You're speeding down the road. Why don't you go ahead and just get straight into it then?
All right. Yeah. So I watched Driveways recently, last weekend, and it's one of Brian Dennehy's last films before he passed away recently. And this is one of those movies that is like really low budget, but it's one of those gems that you discovered. Like, I remember it made me feel like when we used to work at Blockbuster, like nobody knows about this movie, and it may not be the best movie or the most well-made movie, but like there's like a lot of heart in this movie, and it's just really sweet and nice and a good watch. A lady and her son go back to the town in which her sister's just recently passed away, and they have to clean out her house. And Brian Dennehy lives next to the sister, and the son and Brian Dennehy like kind of strike up a friendship. Brian Dennehy, of course, is in the later stages of life and goes down to the VFW and lives alone. It's really interesting. It's really good. I heard it talked about as if Gran Torino was nice, like if Clint Eastwood's character in Gran Torino was actually like people. And I do see that, and it's just a much nicer, sweeter version of that movie. But like going back to the Blockbuster stuff, it's one of those movies that you find and you just recommend it to people that are going to love it because they've never heard of it. And you're like, here, check this movie out. You're going to love it.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a really good feeling. And I want to do that again, but on, kind of a larger scale in the podcast, like to you two guys and the listeners. I think everybody should go check it out. It's on Amazon. It's like $3.99 to rent. And I think it's well worth your time. And it has Hong Chow in it, and she was recently in you guys' favorite episode, The Watchmen, or favorite TV show, The Watchmen. And I thought she's much better than this, actually. I think she was a little bit weirder in The Watchmen, but this is a little more grounded performance. So
cool. I want to see this. I will probably definitely be checking it out soon. I don't know if I'm going to pay $3.99 for it.
It's worth it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. You're right. There's a lot of stuff to watch, though, man. And also, I reject your description of me not liking The Watchmen. I just have problems with some of the exposition and plot devices they use because it's lazy. For sure.
I apologize for putting you in a hole or putting
Thank
you.
Yeah.
I embrace it because by the end, I do not like the show.
Yeah, as time goes on, I like it less, but I still feel like it's overall worth watching, especially given how the world fell apart shortly after it came out. And it's interesting to kind of like compare how timely it was.
Yeah, it might feel more timely and a little bit more poignant, I guess.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to rewatch it now in light of recent events.
Yeah, but anyway, cool. So that's Driveways. What year did that come out?
This year.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. You might have said this, but is it kind of a dramedy or is it more of just a drama?
I would call it a drama. There's certainly funny parts in it. But it's a drama.
Okay. Cool. Good to know.
All right, cool. So the only thing I really want to talk about this week is an old film. I believe from the early 70s. I didn't even look up the date. And this is actually a film starred Christopher Reeve.
Yay!
Yeah, not you. But, I know, I'm sorry. Anyway, I've watched the film Somewhere in Time. Have either of you guys seen this movie?
Oh, a long, long time ago.
I have not. I have no idea what it's about.
Yeah, I didn't either until it started. Actually, my girlfriend is the one that was like, hey, you know what? Let's watch Somewhere in Time. And it was completely random and unprovoked, and I was like, yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. I've never had anyone say that to me before.
Yeah.
So I did. And you know what? This movie's cute. It's like a really wholesome time travel love story kind of thing. It's like a really sweet episode of Doctor Who without the doctor in it. Chris, you said you've seen this movie, right?
Yeah, a long time ago. I remember.
Okay, what's your experience with this movie?
I liked it. I remember at the end, like I saw it when I didn't quite understand like love and things like that. So I had a lot of questions for my mom at the end. Like I was like, and I don't want to give anything away, but like, why did this happen and why did he do that and stuff like that. But I remember really enjoying it. And back then, as a kid, like Christopher Reeve was like my hero. So like anything with him in it, I just was head over heels for because we have the same name. I don't know if you guys knew, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't allude to it earlier or anything.
No.
But, Jane Seymour's in this, as well as a younger Christopher Plummer, who is still quite old, it feels like. But, this movie's cute. It's very simple. It's very, very simple. It's like their method of time travel in this movie is like it's like hand wavy. It's so simple. It's like, I think all you have to do to time travel in this movie is to like put yourself in a room with no like objects to remind you of what time period you're in, and then just really, really envision where you want to be year-wise. And then that's all you got to do.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. But anyways, it's all explained and detailed and laid out in the script, and it kind of unfolds in such a way to where it feels pretty good. It's such an early time travel movie. I mean, this is pre Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is like, I don't know. It's almost like this movie. I'm sure there's time travel movies that existed before this one, but it feels like a lot of like the common tropes and rules that you see in time travel movies were kind of being established and explored in this movie. And it's kind of interesting to kind of see like what they choose to focus on, and what, they think the audience will find interesting about the time travel, and that's all I really want to say is it's about a guy that travels back in time from 1971 or 2 to like 1912. And, I don't want to get too much more specific than that, but I will just say that the two leads, I think Christopher Reeve and Jane Seymour, have really wonderful chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I think Christopher Plummer is pretty fun to watch. The plot is actually quite similar to Red Shoes in a lot of ways, which is interesting because we just talked about that and I just reviewed it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I'll keep it brief and just say that if you guys are looking for a nice, like, maybe it might be even rated G, but at the very most PG. If you're looking for just a very simple, wholesome, short, watchable time travel movie that predates most time travel movies that I hear talked about quite a bit, then check out Somewhere in Time, because it's not bad. I liked it. I don't think it's great, but I'm thinking about it quite a bit, and I think it's got a lot of heart, as we said earlier. That's pretty charming when a movie has heart, even if it has flaws other places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, it was written by Richard Matheson.
The I Am Legend guy?
Mm-hmm. He wrote I Am Legend and Jaws 3D.
Yeah, he also wrote the book.
Yeah,
he didn't write the movie
and...
I Am Legend, which is why it sucks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, he wrote the book I Am Legend. He wrote the book and screenplay for Somewhere in Time, apparently. The screenplay for Jaws 3D. Also, he wrote the books that What Dreams May Come.
Oh, interesting. He wrote the book What Dreams May Come, but not the movie?
Yes, apparently, according to IMDb.
What Dreams May Come feels a lot like Somewhere in Time, in a way.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Very dreamy.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, so anyways, Somewhere in Time, I watched it on Amazon, rented it for $3.99. It was good. I also watched some other stuff, but I'll keep it short, and I'll just pass it on to Justin. What you been up to, other than getting married?
Are you still married?
Still married. That's nice. So we're making it, really.
2 weeks in.
Really going for it here. But yeah, we talked about that enough last week. So I've been watching a lot of TV lately, and I've been looking for a show to watch by myself once my wife and I are done watching things. And so recently I started watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine at the recommendation of a couple of my friends, because I was looking for something kind of short and sitcom-y, because I think the last thing I watched was I watched all of Better Call Saul and caught up with that, and then I watched Devs, and those are both like these kind of hour-long shows. So I was looking for something shorter, you know, and so I started Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and I'm only like maybe 5 or 6 episodes into it, so I don't really have a lot to say about it yet, other than I'm mostly enjoying it so far, and I plan to keep watching it. But the one thing I did want to bring up on here, have either of you guys seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Oh yeah, I love it.
Only clips. So no, not really.
Okay. Well, in the third episode, at least I believe it's the third episode of the show, the episode opens with them debating of like the best cop movies of all time, and like Die Hard's brought up, and like Lethal Weapon I think might be brought up, or something like that. RoboCop I think is brought up. And then Terry Crews's character leans in and he says Francois Truffaut's Breathless, which is, I mean, to me is not a cop movie necessarily.
Yeah, it's not even accurate.
There are cops in it, but it's also not a Truffaut movie. It's a Jean-Luc Godard movie. And Chris is laughing, and so maybe it's a joke that was written that I didn't understand, but I've not stopped thinking about it since that happened. Like every episode I'm watching, I'm just thinking of like, man, I remember that time he said Truffaut's Breathless, and I don't understand if that was a written joke or not, or a genuine like slip up that made it into the show.
Yeah,
that is an interesting. What does that mean for his character? Like he just wants to impress everybody to make him think that he watches like foreign films. But
yeah,
so it's not a cop movie.
I feel like that wouldn't.
And it got the wrong
cops,
director.
Yeah, but it's not like they were talking about fancy films and he tried to fit in by saying one and screwed it up. Like
he was trying to impress him though. He was like, anyways.
Is that the take? Because I did not play that way to me. I was just like, oh,
I have no idea. That's the only thing I can I think of right off.
Obviously, it didn't make the impression on you that it made on me, because
no.
It has stuck with me. But I tweeted this out and got a couple of responses saying they address it in like later episodes. I haven't gotten there yet, but if anybody's listening and they have a thought on why this happens and can explain whether or not this is a joke and I should get a life, please let me know.
Tweet at Terry Crews, and see if you can get him to respond.
Yeah, he's pretty active on Twitter. You could probably get a response out of that guy.
That sounds scary.
It's actually really interesting. You bring it up. There's a little bit of other stuff. If you're done talking about it.
Yeah.
Some of the news coming from Brooklyn Nine-Nine is that, they had like 8 episodes written for the new season, right? But
that show's still going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
had like a weird thing where it got canceled by, I guess, is it NBC is what it was on?
No, it got canceled by Fox, and then it went to NBC.
That's what it is. Okay.
Oh, weird. Usually it's like a internet company that saves these shows, not like a fellow.
Yeah.
It actually
very weird.
Fit better on NBC anyways. The guy that...
It feels like an NBC show. I'll say that.
Michael Schur, I believe, is the guy that does the show, and he has done a bunch of other stuff. Like I believe he did The Good Place. Let me look this up before.
Yeah, make sure you get his name right this time, because 2 years ago when you talked about this guy, he got his last name wrong.
Oh, well, I don't guarantee anything. Michael Schur, Schur.
Yeah, that sounds right to me.
Yeah.
I think last time you said his name was like Schubert.
Oh, Schubert. Michael Schubert. But he also did Parks and Recreation, The Good Place. A lot of his movies or TV shows are just about like nice people, like people being nice to each other, kind of. And they're really nice. I like them. So.
Well, let me ask you this. I have not watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine, as I said earlier, but I did watch Parks and Recreation. But I didn't finish it because I feel like it did the same thing The Office did, which is go on far too long. And all the characters become like cartoons of what they originally were.
I mean, there might be some of that eventually.
Right. So like, for example, like in Parks and Recreation, I think the show should have ended when the season whenever she runs for city council. Because I think it goes on 2 years after that. And like you have characters changing and leaving and all that stuff. And
yeah,
it kind of becomes stale, in my opinion. Like, not as biting, not as clever, and sort of just kind of coasting until the end of the show. Does Brooklyn Nine-Nine feel consistent and sharp the whole time, or does it kind of get into, like, goofy land? Chris?
I don't think that it's entered into the 2-year slump, or like where they need to start wrapping it up type of thing.
Okay, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, though, right? Like, I'm not going to say, Parks and Recreation is not a good show because I enjoyed it, but
yeah,
I
but
think
certainly,
no matter who you are, I think you can kind of acknowledge that it doesn't have the same magic near the end that it did in the middle.
The Office does the same thing, you know.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Any sitcom that goes on more than like 5 or 6 years, I think, inevitably does that.
yeah.
Yep.
But that kind of is interesting enough. I forgot where I was going with they've already written 8 episodes into the next season, but because of the protests and the Black Lives Matter stuff that's really important, it felt like they shouldn't be portraying cops in this way. And so they're like basically have gone back to the drawing board as to how they even want to put on the show. Like it may not come back. I'm sure it'll come back in some form or another, but like it may be a very different show that comes back, you know, like maybe they all become firefighters or something. But they just weren't feeling comfortable portraying New York police in this way. In like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Based on what I've seen.
It's a strange time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I will say to your thoughts is that so far, to me, Brooklyn Nine-Nine seems to have started in more of a silly area than Parks and Rec or The Office did. You know how they started kind of semi-realistic, and
Sure.
as you
Okay.
said, the characters get cartoony. These characters are pretty cartoony to me already.
Sure. Well, I could throw you like an alternate then, like 30 Rock. That's a show that starts out like, really cartoony and silly. And then by the end of it, it still manages to have the same problem. Like after 5 or 6 seasons, in my opinion, it starts to really dwindle in quality and the writing starts to get convoluted and they just keep pushing the characters further and further with like ridiculous situations. And you'll have characters marrying someone for a season, even though it won't last because that person's a celebrity guest star. Like, you know what I mean? Like just weird decisions that happen in like the later seasons of sitcoms. So I was just wondering, like, I tend to be reluctant to start sitcoms until I know they end well.
No. Yeah. Well, it's hard because they tend to only cancel sitcoms when they're not going so well anymore, or
Exactly.
It's just been so long. So I
Exactly.
think you just have to like enjoy what's good about a sitcom
Yeah.
for as long as it's good, and then if it gets bad, you can either get out or just finish it reluctantly and be like, yeah, those were bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's been keeping me from starting a lot of sitcoms lately, I think.
For me, even Parks and Recreation, I still kind of like hanging out with those characters. So like, I don't begrudge my time with them. I'm like, this is not nearly as good as it used to be, but like, I don't mind hanging out with those people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I feel that way about The Office and 30 Rock.
Yeah.
I think my fear is always just that, like, it's the thing of like whenever you're watching something and the character does something that makes you annoyed, but you're supposed to be laughing, and it's supposed to be something that's like a classic, thing that this character would do. Like in The Office, for example, like Dwight. Like that's a character that like is really only successful whenever it's like a less is more approach. There's like, it's like early on, and like, even like in the good seasons, like in season 2 or season 3, there's like a fire in the office, like in the break room.
Mm-hmm.
Dwight's character like literally picks up the water and starts like chunking water into the room blindly and like rolling on the ground and screaming at everyone to like get down, like that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about, where it's like they don't even take the character seriously or the reality of the show they're in anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or like in Parks and Recreation, like I said a few weeks ago, like eventually Chris Pratt's character is too dumb to do anything.
Yeah.
And it's like that creep of like, if you're not careful, your writing can catch up to you and kind of paint you into like this corner of like a world where like nothing matters anymore. And shows like Community can do that too, but I think with Community, it's very self-aware that it's doing that.
Well, it's so meta, yeah.
Yeah, that it kind of works better.
Yeah. Well, I we'll have to report back because, like I said, I think I'm like 6 episodes into Brooklyn 999.
999.
That's one too many nines. That's 27, not 18. Brooklyn 99. I'm only 6 episodes in, so I will watch more and maybe report back later when I either catch up or finish it.
Cool. Yeah, I've been actually wanting to start this TV show for a long time. And if they can come back, like Chris said, after this pandemic and still have good reviews well into like what, their 9th season or whatever now? 8th season? 7th season? I don't know.
They have 8 seasons out right now.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, we'll see.
Oh, wait, no. They have 7 seasons and the 8th one would be the next one.
Cool. Yeah, but I'm probably more likely to start Schitt's Creek as far as my next like funny sitcom show goes because apparently that show ended top notch.
Yeah, I think so. I think it ends in a better place than it starts and doesn't really have that downhill slump.
Good.
So
almost unheard of for a sitcom that's lasted 6 seasons.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the good time to end it.
I agree. All right, cool. So anything else that we want to talk about with Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Nope, that's it.
Cool. Oh, by the way, sidebar, did you get into this because of Palm Springs?
Yeah, I think it was partially enjoying Andy Samberg in Palm Springs and then
I did
just
too.
Asking friends for recommendations, and they said, there were other recommendations they gave me, but I think, yeah, Brooklyn Nine-Nine stuck out because of Andy Samberg, and I was like, okay, I like Palm Springs. I'll give it a go.
Yeah, you're ready to like Andy Samberg now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. I thought it might be the reason that you started it. Okay, I guess we should move into our review now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's go.
All right, here we go. First Cow, coming at you.
What's your name?
King Lou.
They call me Cookie. My mother died when I was born, and then my father died. I never stopped moving.
It's the getting started that's the puzzle. No way for a poor man to start.
You have a cow.
First cow in the territory.
This ain't a place for cows.
Well, it's no place for white men either.
I sense opportunity here.
Good Lord, give me another.
I'll give you 6 ingots for that last one.
I taste London in this cake.
We have to take what we can when the taking is good.
Seems dangerous.
So is anything worth doing? A royal cow.
Duty barely produces a thing. Some people can't imagine being stolen from.
Let's hope he's one of those. We got a window here, Cookie.
History isn't here yet. It's coming, but maybe this time we can
Take it on our own terms.
Okay, so as always with our more recent films, ones that have come out this year or in the last year or so, we will be doing a spoiler-free section up front. So we will be speaking generally about the film, not giving away any major spoilers that the film doesn't give away itself in the opening minutes. But if you have not seen First Cow, we will give you a spoiler alert and a warning before we move into spoilers. So you can pause the podcast, go watch First Cow, and then come back and finish listening to the rest of the episode.
All right. So First Cow was directed by Kelly Reichardt. It stars John Magaro and Orion Lee. The IMDb synopsis says, a skilled cook has traveled west and joined a group of fur trappers in Oregon, though he only finds true connection with a Chinese immigrant also seeking his fortune. Soon, the two collaborate on a successful business.
Riveting.
Yep. Classy synopsis. I like it. All right. So, guys, I've been looking forward to this movie for quite a while. I'm glad we finally get to watch it. I think as soon as I heard the title of this film and then found out that it was from Kelly Reichardt, I was there. That's all I really needed to know. But who wants to get us started on this film?
Oh, man. I thought you were going to take it with your introduction of how excited you were.
Okay, so this is the fourth film that I've seen by Kelly Reichardt. The others being Old Joy, Wendy and Lucy, and then Meek's Cutoff. And I've enjoyed all of them. She specializes, I think, in this really wonderful, slow, understated, character-based drama. And I think First Cow might be my favorite film I've seen of hers. I think it's very well paced. I enjoy the quiet tone, the humor, the performances. It feels very understated, as I mentioned earlier. And I enjoyed both leading performances quite a bit and their relationship. And I think their relationship is actually the type of male relationship that you don't necessarily see portrayed on screen that often.
Right.
It doesn't go into like corny places or melodramatic places. It feels very right, and it feels very true, and it feels very honest, and it feels very fair to everyone and very non-judgmental, which is, I think, what I love so much about all her films that I've seen. And I will keep it short there. But just to say that I quite liked it. And one of the best movies of the year so far, in a year where there hasn't been that many movies. But even still, I don't want that to undersell my enthusiasm.
Okay, well, I can pick up there. And I agree with you that this is one of my favorite films of 2020. And there hasn't been a ton, but I did really enjoy this movie. This is actually only my second Kelly Reichardt movie, though. The only other one I'd seen is Wendy and Lucy, although I think, more times than I can count on both hands, you've recommended Meek's Cutoff to me, and I still haven't watched it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mix between Wendy and Lucy and this, actually. That's a pretty good representation of Meek's Cutoff.
Yeah, and I even backed Oscilloscope, I think, did like a Kickstarter for a restoration of her first movie, River of Grass.
Oh, and I want to see that.
I backed it, and I got a Blu-ray copy of it through the Kickstarter, and I haven't watched it.
Well, maybe you should.
But I should. I should, because now Kelly Reichardt is 2 for 2 with me, because I really enjoyed First Cow. She's very good at like these super minimalist stories. I kind of jokingly said riveting when you read the synopsis, because it's basically about a good cook and a guy starting a business making bread together, and
delicious.
That's not the
bread.
Most riveting, like, or maybe not riveting, but like exciting story from like frontier travel that you could imagine, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's more than I thought it was whenever I went into it. I thought it was going to be more about the cow. I thought we were going to get like an Alhazar. Oh, what is that?
Alhazard Balthazar.
Yes, thank you.
I
thought we were just going to follow this cow amongst his like adventures through the New World or whatever. I didn't know.
Oh man, we need to make that movie.
Well, it's been made kind of about a donkey, as we just mentioned. But anyways, yeah, I kind of didn't know what this movie was about. I thought it was going to be more about the cow, but I guess you're right that this is maybe a little bit more eventful. Although I think I like Alhazard Balthazar better than this movie, even though why would we even compare him other than
other than the name made me think of one of them?
There's an animal in both of them.
Yeah. But anyways, back to this movie. I love slice of life films. I love films that have very simple, non-melodramatic stories, and watching people live their lives and see how they survive or how they go through life on a day-to-day basis. And this film, it had that, and I was appreciative that it didn't get to a point where I thought, well, I guess it's kind of spoilery, so I won't go into detail too much of what I thought about that. But like, I thought that there would be more conflict to arise, and there would be more like on the nose arguments at some point between the two characters. But I like that they don't really go into like this sort of territory that you've seen before with like two guys going in on something together and having like arguments. I think that's basically what you said, Mike. The one thing I will say that's is also super minimalist about this movie is the lighting. It's a very flat lit at times, especially nighttime scenes. They almost feel like they don't have light. They almost feel like they are lit by moonlight, because even I was watching the film at night, and I'm glad I didn't watch it during the day, because I thought that some of the cinematography was very dark.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a bright room at all, that's like makes dark scenes difficult to see. I could see really struggling with this film, because even in like a dark room in the middle of the night, I struggled to see some things. And I think that could annoy some people, but I kind of appreciate Kelly Reichardt's style in terms of like minimalist camera work, minimal framing. This is even like not making the story melodramatic by giving it a cinematic aspect ratio. This is in that like square 4:3 aspect ratio.
Meek's Cutoff is like that too.
Yeah, I don't think Wendy and Lucy is that way from my recollection.
No, but the lighting and the camera work is pretty similar throughout all the films that I've seen of hers, which is she likes to do very natural light.
Yeah, and I like that choice because it keeps everything grounded in this style. And I like the choice of the aspect ratio in this, which I guess also references like, you know, those older sort of Western stories and frontiersman stories.
Type tales.
Yeah. So anyways, a lot of good performances. We will dive into what this film means, because I think it's saying a lot about capitalism and some other things, maybe about like immigration and relationships with immigrants. And I'm sure we'll dive into that stuff. But I will leave it there that I really like this film. In a different year, I would say that I don't know that it would end up being in like my top 10 at the end of the year, but 2020 being what it is, I think there's a good chance that it will. So sure. Yeah, I will pass it off to Chris. What did you think of First Cow?
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I really love this movie. I love the two lead performances in it. One of the things you brought up, Justin, was the aspect ratio, and I found that really interesting. I haven't seen Meek's Cutoff, but it's interesting. You know, you think like Western or frontier story, and you kind of want to put the scope. You know, like they're in the wild and it's beautiful, and so you want to like put it in the full theatrical scope so you can see as much as you can, and like the beauty and the grandeur of the background. You know, like but I think it's an interesting choice to do it in the 4:3, and it becomes much more intimate, you know, like, and maybe even a little claustrophobic, because one of the things I really noticed is that like, it's a everyday struggle just to eat food, you know, like they're on like being a frontiersman like that, you're basically on the knife's edge between death and like, you know, you have to gather up your food every day, you know, like just like one bad day or one bad week of food wise, and you're done for, you know, like there's no like safety nets, you know, to catch you. So for me, there's this like claustrophobia that kind of came in with that. Like you have to go get more food and do all this stuff, you know, like yeah,
like the really opening scenes whenever he's gathering the mushrooms, and like the party that he's traveling with of like the fur trappers that are like super manly men and like macho. They're like, I don't like you. You need to do better.
Those guys were the funniest because, you know, like they would, and the background actors, in fact, like kind of tell their own story. All the different background people, but like I love those guys because they would be like they would fight over the silliest things. They'd be like, you know, like, oh, I wanted the soup first or whatever, and then they just like every conversation that they had, the manly men had, would devolve into violence where they're like beating the shit out of each other. I thought that was really funny.
Like the very beginning, whenever they're gonna like one dude's like, I want to kick your ass, and he's like, leave him alone, and they just start fighting, and then the dude just walks away.
But yeah, so I really love this movie. I'm interested to hear what, like, you know, the capitalism stuff and go into further detail about that. But in a year like this, this movie is really great, and I've really found an appreciation for these like small, quiet movies, the movies that are about the things that happen in between the big events, you know, to a certain extent of your life. And I find them really comforting. I like because it's just small and quiet and like meditative. Like,
then
I
you
feel
should
like
definitely watch Old Joy, Wendy and Lucy, and Meek's
Yeah.
Cutoff. Then,
yeah. Reichardt sounds like she's a lady for me.
yeah, I think you're gonna like
so.
the rest of her stuff. At least what I've seen.
Yeah. Anyways, that's where I'm at, and I'm glad you guys both really liked it. So it'll make this conversation more interesting.
Yeah. The one thing I want to ask you guys, Mike, you called the movie out, I think, in for being slowly paced, or what did you said something earlier?
I said well paced.
Well paced,
but
yeah,
that translates to slowly paced, in my opinion.
Yeah. Normally we say
paced.
deliberately paced.
There we go. Deliberately paced.
So it's definitely such a slow, simple story that it does have that sort of deliberately paced feel to it, where we can really dwell on some scenes. We can really watch him pick mushrooms, that sort of thing. And what I will say is that even though it felt that way, I was so surprised. Like, at a certain point, I had to pause the movie to take my dog out, and I thought maybe I'd watch like 30 to 40 minutes of this movie, and I was about an hour and a half in.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very surprised at how slow the movie feels and how simple it is, where some people might say not a lot is necessarily happening, that the movie moves really quickly, actually.
Well, that's why I said well paced and not deliberately paced, because I didn't want it to seem boring. I think it's actually great because it's it's only like a 2-hour movie, but it feels like, I feel like it's a big story, but also a small one at the same time. I don't know. It's like a weird thing to describe, but
yeah, it feels like an hour and a half movie in the end. Like, if I hadn't seen the runtime and someone asked me how long the movie is, I'm like, I think it's about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I'd be wrong because it's 2 hours.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, when a movie's well done, it kind of doesn't matter, and when it's well acted, like what the characters are doing, like picking mushrooms is the most interesting thing, because and then in your head you're thinking, oh man, this guy has to pick mushrooms every day or he's going to die. You know, there's no back, you know, at least that's what I'm thinking about, you know, like what it must have been like to live there, and your mind kind of wanders and dwells on those topics, and so it's not necessarily, when you're engaged with it, you're going with it, and time seems to fly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this idea that, you know, the two leads, they aren't popular. They're both loners, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They've been traveling their whole lives, it seems, and neither of them really have a place to belong. And I really enjoyed how they seemed to understand that about one another. Like, immediately, they seem to just kind of get that about one another. And there's this easiness that they have around each other that they don't have around other people in the story, it seems. When we first meet one of them, he's on the run because of, like, racial violence and a mix-up there, you know? And so they're both, like, these loners that are just in need of somebody. So it's like this idea that, like, once you have someone that you can rely on, someone that you can bounce off of to bring out the best in you, that's when you can really flourish, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like neither of these guys were meeting their full potential, but they both had potential. And I think that's an interesting thing, that, like, this land, this world that they're in is so cruel and so toxic and masculine and racist and bigoted, or whatever you want to call it, that, you know, they can drift for decades just with no one but themselves, you know? And I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's some aspects of that we can't talk about yet, being in non-spoilers section. But yeah, I'm with you. There's the relationship is, it's interesting to watch unfold, and there's a pleasantness to it.
Yeah, I root for it.
Yeah, that I found myself kind of smiling sometimes just watching their interactions and what they would do together.
Yeah, I agree. Also, sidebar, I want to say Toby Jones is really good in this.
He's a guy that looks evil, kind of, from the get-go, or looks like problematic, and I think they use that to full extent in whatever the second Jurassic World movie was called, Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give away too much, but when he shows up, like I expected some more melodramatic, heavy things to happen, and even his character made me smile.
Yeah,
I agree with that, and I actually think this is one of my favorite, more favorite performances from him, I guess, because he doesn't have to be like this weaselly little creepy guy. He can just kind of be a guy, you know, like a regular guy. He's not. A lot of times, I feel like he's cast for how off-putting he can be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's nice to see him just play like I don't want to say antagonist, but just, you know, it's nice to see him play a man that's not like trying to kill Captain America or whatever, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And another thing I'll compliment the film for too, and maybe I noticed this because I was watching the film via headphones because my wife was asleep. But the sound like scape of this movie, there's a lot of like nature sounds and sounds of water.
Yeah.
It kind of lulls you into this sort of like passive mood while you're watching, and just, you know, maybe keeps you from thinking about other things and helps make it flow so well. It's like meditative. But yeah, I think that's all I have for non-spoiler stuff. Everything else I have is would involve spoilers.
Yeah,
I agree. Let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
All right, Justin. So now that we are in spoilers, why don't you kick us off with your thought that you can't talk about till now?
I found it super interesting to watch this character who like dreams of making bread and being a baker in this like rough environment. I don't know. There's something very where he seems like a character at odds with everything around him, because I don't know if it's just me, but like the idea of a baker and like a bread maker and a sweet maker just conjures like a much cleaner, nicer environment.
Oh yeah.
than this. And I think I have some questions in my mind over whether or not, what is the character's name played by Orion Lee?
King Lou.
Cookie. Oh no.
Cookie's the main guy.
Cookie's the main guy. King Lou. I just kept feeling like there was some manipulation of his simple demeanor, or like he was just kind of a little too like clean and innocent, and he's sort of being dragged along by him later on, especially when they tend to get like for lack of a better word, like kind of greedy. And it seems like he's always about like, well, just let's do just a little bit more before we move on and try to do our own thing. And how do you take that relationship? Do you think that he's being manipulated? That I think we mentioned earlier that they bring out the best in each other in some ways, but I think like ultimately it goes too far and King Lou's kind of bad for him. What do you guys think?
Yeah, that thought crossed my mind too while I was watching it. However, though, I don't know, because there's a moment at the end where he's sitting there with the bag of money, right? And he can leave with all the money, but he decides to just lay down next to Cookie, right? So I do think it's about the friendship. I was really scared that he was going to leave with that money and betray Cookie in that way. And that was, worrisome. But because he doesn't take the money in the end, I don't think he is like manipulating Cookie. I mean,
well, I think both characters have their flaws.
Yeah.
Like
maybe
I don't
exploiting
think,
him is a better word.
I don't think so. I mean, I get why you would think that, but I don't think so. I think he's just kind of a flawed businessman. Just like Cookie's a flawed social person. Like Cookie's really talented at making things, but he's poor and doesn't have the people skills necessary to like get ahead. And when he joins a party of fur trappers at the beginning of the movie, they want to kill him and rob him because they hate him, right? And then King Lu, he's on the run because his companion or whoever he was with was killed in some sort of racial incident.
Mm-hmm.
And so neither of them are necessarily cut out for this world, and they've both been on their own for so long. My impression was just that King Lu is just a born survivor. Like, if he wasn't looking for the next meal ticket, he wouldn't have survived this long.
Yeah.
So I think it's just more of like an inherent state of mind. I think they just get too good at it and they get so happy and comfortable together, they push it too far. And also the added element is that just because they're friends and they're our main characters doesn't mean they're smart or good at this, right? Like, after all, they're both losers who were on their own that found each other that way. So if they were good at surviving, they would probably be in better positions at the start of the movie. So I don't necessarily think that King Lu is taking advantage so much as I think that they were genuinely excited to work together, and neither of them were really smart enough to quit while the getting was good, you know?
Okay. So it's just kind of like innocently making a mistake, because I guess I'm thinking of Cookie wanting to leave, because there are certain points where he's like, we've got enough to go. And we've got enough to do this. Like, maybe we should just head out now. We can't keep doing this. And King Lu is kind of like, one more.
Well, maybe, yeah. Score, I mean, there's an element where, maybe he's got a little taste of the American dream now, for lack of a better term. Well, and the greed is getting to him. I mean, that would definitely be a theme that would fit into this film, I think, in this time period, the early days of America.
There's certainly the element of greed and like, let's do more.
And the idea that, like, in order to get ahead, you have to steal from someone else.
Yeah. But I think there was a moment, though, where Cookie's like, we have enough to go. We can go to San Francisco. And then King Lu says, we have exactly the right amount. Or, like, we have enough money to get us to San Francisco, but we don't have enough money to live in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So it was like, I think Cookie, while being a good baker, wasn't necessarily the best judge of money and
he's
things
just a
like
gentle,
that.
moral guy who is uncomfortable stealing, but also not smart enough to really plan his future or the trip ahead. That's kind of the vibe I got.
Yeah, King Lu's like, we need to have $100 when we get to San Francisco, and that's kind of how I read it. It's easy to see it the other way too, and I would like if that was the way you came away from it, I would totally understand that perception.
Yeah, I came away with the question more than the for sure thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a question that's definitely you're meant to have, because they do add the scenes in there to give you the evidence that Cookie was trying to be the voice of like, hey, maybe we're pushing this too far kind of thing.
Yeah.
And do you think his discomfort with stealing and stuff plays into him talking to the cow? Because that's some of my favorite stuff in this movie too.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think he would
go on.
I feel like he would just talk to that cow, like whatever cow he's milking, he's going to talk to. It's kind of like, well, I'm going to be milking you, and we might as well be friends.
We might as well get to know each other before I reach down there.
Yeah.
He seems like a very gentle soul who's very, like, in tune with nature, very, no violence to anything, not even really that much confrontation. He never raises his voice.
He was born, I mean, like 100 years too early. Like, not that he'd be great. I mean, there's still, like, toxic masculinity and crazy stuff. But back then, I'm sure, like, he wasn't made for that world, I don't think. So yeah, but yeah, he's very gentle and a really like interesting character.
Yeah, and I guess before we get too far into the movie too, the other thing I wanted to ask you guys about is what significance do you find of the scene with the baby in the bar? Like he gets left with this baby to watch it, and he's going to watch it, and then he kind of gets talked out of watching the baby, like he's kind of agreed to or supposed to, and kind of leaving this baby by itself by King Lu. And he kind of has this moment where he like touches, he says something to the baby, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
Like gives it food or something. walks away.
Yeah. Is that kind of a precursor to the cow stuff, or is this a precursor to King Lu talking him into doing something that maybe isn't right? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't. It feels like he's kind of the guy that the other guys see as basically a woman, like, or he gets put upon, like, oh, watch my baby for me, do this for me, because that's the kind of guy Cookie is he's always going to be really nice. And so
watch the baby cook the food.
yeah. And essentially he does woman's work by cooking and, like watching the baby. But like, and I think he'll just do it. He just does those things. And so that's, I think, also...
There's never an element of standing up for himself either.
Right. And I think that's where we have the issue with King Lu, too, is he never stands up for himself. So you're like, is this something that Cookie really wants to do? Because he's never going to stand up for himself, even if he doesn't want to do it. Like, he's going to go along no matter what. And I think that's probably where a lot of that uncomfortable feeling comes with between King Lu and Cookie for us. Like, is King Lu pushing him too far, or like taking advantage of him?
Sure, but I get the vibe that at first King Lu is genuinely just like he thinks he's a good man because he saved him in the woods. Snuck him out of there, and at that point I don't even know that King Lu has the knowledge that he's even particularly talented at baking. The idea of becoming the baking scam just sort of comes after he brings up the fact that he's like, I could make biscuits if I had milk.
Yeah.
And then that's whenever the brainstorming seemed to start. So I think it's more like their personalities just clicked in the right way, and they're both better for each other, but also worse at the same time. Like, worse in the sense that, like, they'll push each other too far a little bit, but better in the sense that they're more self-actualized, I think, when they have one another. And I think the greed element, I don't know that has to do with their toxic friendship so much as that might just be an element and part of the theme towards just greed in America and capitalism.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, we already talked about the idea that to get ahead, you have to steal from someone else if you've got nothing, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's interesting, the idea that this is the first cow in the region, right? As the film tells us, first cow. Yet everyone around, even the person who owns the cow, obliviously so, is appreciative of what that cow is bringing to the world, right? Or the environment around them. Yet he couldn't enjoy those things without them taking the advantage and stealing from him. So it's like this interesting parallel of like, he owns the only... He monopolized that cow, basically. He's not doing anything with it.
Yeah, he's not sharing it at all, right? He's he's the Jeff Bezos of this world.
Yeah, almost, in a sense that where it's like, just like these little cakes that he's enjoying too. He's probably enjoying these cakes more than he would ever enjoy like a full glass of like regular cow milk.
Yeah, really, instead of being upset, like they were stealing the milk, and I mean, that is wrong, but like he could have he's like, all right, you're hired. Like, why don't you make these for me, once a week or something? And instead of killing them,
Yeah, it went to like this personal insult territory right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they say that he's got the cow because he enjoys milk with his tea. Yeah. And I kind of take that to mean that is that cow's purpose. Is to give him milk for his tea.
That may be too, yeah.
There is so much more that you can do with milk. And without sharing it with other people who can then do other things, he's not experiencing the full capacity of what this cow can do.
Well,
right?
And he's making the world that he lives in and inhabits actively worse.
Yeah.
Right? By like keeping things that he can't use, can't possibly like fathom the potential of, but he's hoarding it. And when he doesn't hoard it, even unknowingly so, his life improves, everyone's life improves. The world starts to get a little bit more modern and good, and people start to get passionate and joy out of things. But out of principle, because he's so insulted, they didn't even go to like straight to like call the law and have them like arrested or whatever.
Well, there was no law, probably.
Well, there was something, right? But like instead, it's straight to like, let's kill them and go to their house and destroy it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, it's a bold statement. Like, I understand like cattle rustlers and stuff like that were killed back in the day, but they were literally just milking the damn thing.
I think there's an argument that, you know, maybe once the cow, they got a male cow for it, because they brought 3 cows, right? Like it was a male cow and a calf, and
yeah, and they all died.
Those both died.
Yeah,
except the female. And he does make comment of like, well, you know, we're gonna get her a mate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, maybe you can't share and abuse the cow until you get more of them with a mate and can have more cows and whatnot. So,
well, I don't think that there's like a right answer, because I don't think the solution should be that anyone who buys a cow should let anyone they want come up and milk it. Like, I don't think that's the solution, but I think it's an interesting. There's pros and cons, I guess, to both sides of. Not pros and cons, but I guess there's a point of view. I guess a valid point of view on both sides of this fence here.
Yeah. Well, it's complex.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, you know, Toby Jones isn't an evil guy.
No, I think he's just a prideful man.
Yeah.
King Louis even says it. He's so prideful that he can't even fathom the idea of being stolen from.
Yeah.
Right? I think maybe the closest person to like a really evil, unlikable character that I can think of is the guy that comes to visit him. He's kind of like stuck up a little bit.
Oh, yeah. The officer man?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of his name.
Yeah, the one
captain.
who picks up
I think he's just the captain.
Yeah, he just picks up the bucket, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he's the one that discovers and is like, people have been milking.
I really like the moment where they all go out to see the cow, right? And the cow's just like all friendly and like Cookie's like trying to play it off. It's this funny moment. And then that one guy does notice. He's like, the cow's being weird. I do think that this is probably the best heist movie I've seen in a while.
I'm with you.
Yeah, they had to do one last job.
If only we had like the scene where they plan it out like over a table.
I know. I would like to see that scene in this movie. Like, okay, we will walk over there, and then I will climb in the tree, and you will go milk it. And they have like a big giant blue sheet of paper that they've drawn everything out on. But it's just walking over there. One thing I kept having in the back of my mind that I think it adds an element of suspense to this movie, despite it being so simplistic, is the opening scene with Aaliyah Shawkat, of all people.
Yeah, I was really surprised.
I guess I want to talk about what that does for the movie, of opening the scene with her discovering, or opening the movie with a scene of her discovering these 2 skeletons like laying next to each other.
I think it adds a sense of poignancy to the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of do, because it seems like that everything's fleeting. Like everything that we're watching, I was always like, well, they're going to end up dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like lying next to each other. So it just adds this temporariness to everything that I think is a little bittersweet.
Yeah, I think for me, it kind of made me just nervous a little bit of like, when is this all going to go wrong?
Right.
And what's going to happen? And is that what's going to put these 2 skeletons there? Because I assume they're going to be our 2 main characters. I could have been wrong. It could have been, you know, Toby Jones and one of his people who've caught up to him and they killed him and buried him. But it didn't feel like that kind of movie.
No, I didn't. I didn't ever think that personally. I always just kind of knew that it was going to be the main characters. I just didn't know that it was going to be like what kind of end. I thought they might be old, or, you know, I didn't know the circumstances. I just knew, okay, I'm about to watch the story of 2 people that like get so close that this is how they died, you know? Like they died next to one another. I didn't know if they were murdered or if they were what, you know?
Chris?
Yeah, I think that there's also a certain element of history or a past. Like no matter where you are, there are stories everywhere, like in the dirt, you know, like there are stories and histories for everybody everywhere. You know, like I love, one of the lines is like, history hasn't made it out here yet, or something like that. You remember that line in the movie?
Yeah, I think King Lou says it.
Yeah. And I thought that was really interesting. So like that is literally like the only time there wasn't, well, I guess there was like Native Americans that were probably out there first. Not probably, that were out there first. So there was, I guess maybe the better one would be like white man's history hadn't made it out there yet. But there's just a feeling she's just walking through the forest and like all these things have happened before. And I don't know, it gives a feeling of history to the place.
Yeah.
Also, there's a question that I would have is it the story that she came up with in her head for those two skeletons? Is it all just like her story, or is it an actual story that happened in the past?
Yeah. Yeah, good call. I think it's interesting to see early America through the eyes of immigrants and Native Americans as well. So like, you know, we get multiple Native American characters, I think, that speak throughout the movie. And then we also have King Lu, who's one of our main protagonists. I think it's interesting, I guess, that she's showing early America through these points of view, through a lot of characters that had no agency whatsoever and were, you know, living the full brunt of the worstness of it all, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was kind of thinking about, you know, their partnership, Cookie and King Lu, and, you know, just, I guess the idea of like working together, whereas, you know, he was having like racial problems and racial differences and stuff before, and you know, helping the immigrant and working with them and how they can find success together versus hating each other.
Oh yeah,
like they could have,
looking down on them or thinking that they're worse than you for some reason. Yeah,
right.
Makes sense. That's a good point.
Which is one of those. It's one of those hopeful things that I kind of felt during the movie was, this is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what I choose to take away from this movie more than anything, I think. And I don't have too many more thoughts, but I will just say that I think what I take from this is that we're stronger together. We're stronger when everyone has a chance to pitch in and get to show their own worth, right? And these are two guys that never really got to show their own worth because they were always alone, and they needed the other element to kind of complete their personalities and add the yin to their yang, or the strength where they had none, you know? Like King Lu, good businessman. He has an eye for it, he has an ear for it, and he has a mind for it. But Cookie does not. But Cookie's got talent. So the idea that like we are stronger together, no one is the complete package. That's kind of what I take from this movie, and is that you need a companion, I think, to fully actualize, but you're not. That doesn't make you immune to greed, like we've kind of discussed earlier.
Yeah, and Toby Jones has the milk and the cow.
Yeah,
we're better off if we share or like come to some agreement. I mean, I don't think that if they had gone to him and been like, "Hey, can we use some milk?" That he would have agreed to it, because that's probably, as opposed to stealing it, the best way to go about it at first. But
yeah, I also thought we were going to get into more sort of greed and corruption type stuff at some point, because I think pretty early on into their, I keep wanting to call them donuts, what they made, but they were like oil cakes.
Yeah,
I think they called them.
Like they look good, whatever they were.
They did look good. Oh my gosh!
Except for they were like on the ground, essentially.
The honey and the cinnamon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that, I mean, I think that just comes with like food in those times, is that the food probably has dirt.
It's gonna have a little bit of dirt in it too.
Yeah, but stop touching my cake before you freaking give it to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was also kind of reminiscent of my days of watching the Great British Baking Show, where I would watch them make delicious pastries and donuts and bread, and I was like, oh, that looks so good. This is the closest I felt to that since I finished that show. But anyways, there was a moment early on in their business where one of the characters asks them to like, hold one aside for the captain or whatever, or the chief, who ended up being Toby Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought we were going to get into this sort of like, not crime type thing, but just like
the
corruption
hierarchy
of like
business and greed.
Of like, yeah, oh well, we made 20, but we got to give 10 to, this guy for protection or something, you know. And it might be because I've been watching Community and I watched the chicken finger episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've recently seen that too.
Goodfellas one. Might be why that came to mind. So maybe I'm just misreading that.
No, there's certainly an aspect to it. There was that one moment where the kid had been waiting in line like all day or all morning, and there's like one left, and he was the next in line, and then just some jerk was like, "Move out of the way," you know, like one of those toxic man guys.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Took the last one. And he just was like so sad.
Yeah,
I actually
and
think he
then
worked
that kid
with
just
Toby.
glared at him for like the longest time.
Yeah.
And I was like, this kid's going to murder them.
Well, is that what happened? Because isn't that the kid who
That
we
was
see
chasing him
kind
at
of
the end, yeah.
chasing them and with the gun?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
following them? Like,
Yeah.
or
And
do we
he said-
assume maybe he's the one that found them and killed them? Because, you know, we do cut away with them just laying next to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder.
That's interesting.
I wonder if I assume Cookie just died shortly after that.
Yeah.
But King Lou, did he just lay there and die, or was he murdered?
I'm assuming they were murdered. And they were caught up with, like, maybe he fell asleep and they just caught up and shot him.
Okay. I don't think there's a right answer. I'm just wondering how you guys read it.
Was there something wrong with Cookie's skull?
Yeah, he
was there
cracked his
something
skull
wrong-
open. So I think
No,
Cookie
I know,
was
but
dying anyway.
at the beginning of the movie, wasn't like the skull cracked?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was something with it.
Yeah,
I think Cookie was bleeding in the skull, or had a
for
concussion
sure.
at the very least.
Cookie wasn't going to make it. And it's just really sweet. Like that ending, like he could just take off with that money, and for a second I thought that's what was going to happen. and
Well,
was
I mean,
so
they
sad.
could have both just gone their separate ways, but they tried to meet back up with each other, you know, and that's kind of what led to Cookie's downfall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, good stuff.
Well, cool.
I like it. Are we done? Do we have anything
I
else?
think so.
No, I don't have anything else. It's a good movie, solid.
Yeah, I agree.
I have to watch more Kelly Reichardt stuff now.
I want you
Yeah,
guys
agreed.
to. I want Chris to watch Wendy and Lucy and let me know what he thinks of that movie.
Okay.
I think that's a nice little indie movie, and Michelle Williams is really good in it.
I really love Michelle Williams. You know, like
She's a
just about
gem.
everything. Yeah.
This Wendy and Lucy movie is for you then.
Yeah, Michelle Williams gets to Michelle Williams all over that thing,
Gross.
and she's good at it. It's not gross.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else, are we done with this episode then?
I'm done. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And then, of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bobscotch.
All right, stay tuned to this channel, this feed. Our next episode will be a Casually Criterion episode on E2 Mama Tambien.
That's right. And if you want to send us any questions or topics to discuss about that movie, you can send those to @casualcinecast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also email those to casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks so much for listening, guys, and we will see you next time.
Adios.
Bye-bye.